Hi, Corey. How are you?
I am fantastic. Douglas, how are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
100%.
You are a speaker. That's what I got from your bio, that you speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been a paid speaker for the better part of the last, let's see, 20 years. And so whenever I have to fill out a form and it says, what do you do for an occupation? I say speaker. So I guess that, yeah, that puts me in that category.
So, what do you speak about?
It really varies. Everything from, I've interviewed now in the last number of years, we're just over 6,000 top level influencers. And so that's obviously a pretty big number. So the most common thing I speak on is people bring me in to share the insights I've learned after interviewing so many thought leaders. So people want to know what are the top five traits or what are the things they share in common versus what everybody else is sort of doing. So it's really, I'll call it the timeless secrets of these influential leaders that I'm interviewing. That's really what I spend the bulk of my time speaking on.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit for people that don't know what that is. First of all, what is an influencer?
So to me, an influencer is somebody that I'll say makes you want to take action. Now, what that action is going to obviously vary, but to me, they influence you to take action. So they're a leader that you're willing to follow or make a decision based on what they've shared with you or what they've said to you. And so, really, it comes back to that word influence. They're influencing you to make some decision or take some action, whatever that might look like. And in the world of social media, we hear a lot about social media influencers. So these would be people online, let's say on Instagram, that when they say, hey, you got to check out this book my friend wrote, hundreds or thousands of people say, you know what, I do got to check out that book your friend wrote. So like the Oprah book club, when Oprah said, this is a book you should check out, and it sells thousands or sometimes millions of copies, that to
Right.
me is what an influencer is.
Oh, okay. There's no specific minimum number for an influencer to be considered an influencer, is there?
To me, you can be and influence two people in your whole life. So to me, if you call yourself an influencer and identify as that, then why shouldn't we call you that? It's the same. To me, it's the same. It's interchangeable with leader. So if you're leading a company of two people, you're still a leader. So to me, I don't think there's any number that has to be attached to it.
Okay. So so people hire you to come to their companies and speak, presumably, or what sort of forums do you speak in? What kind of places?
So it does vary. It is corporate, so people do hire me to come in and speak to their staff. It is also associations. So, the association of insert name here, the National Plumbers Association, let's say, will bring me in to speak to their membership. So these are usually paying members or chambers, another good example, a chamber of commerce, where people pay to be a member of their organization. And then every year they have to run personal development stuff for those people, those members who paid to be a part of it. So it's kind of like a bonus to those members. They would bring me in to speak as let's say, their keynote speaker for the year at their annual conference. Or the other thing would be if it's like a public event, like a social media conference or a podcasting conference, that would be another forum that I would speak in. And then the last part, and which is especially, I guess, relevant today, would be virtual summits and virtual events.
Let's say I'm the boss of a corporation and I hire you. What's the end game? What am I trying to achieve by having you speak to my employees?
It really depends on the CEO or the organization. So it would depend on your goals. But let's say in some cases, the company may be going through downsizing or there may be a specific struggle. So you might want me to come in and talk to, like, more of an inspirational talk, but talk to why next year can be better and what we can do to make next year better. You could be bringing me to come in to talk to a specific challenge that you're facing. So, for instance, your employees aren't engaged, so you might want me to come in and talk about how to get more engaged. You might have a customer service issue, so you might want me to come in and talk about what I've learned from interviewing all these high achievers that run large organizations about how they deliver top level customer service. So it really depends on what your goal is. Again, your goal could be to increase sales. It could be to say it's okay that we had a bad year. It could be to rally the morale. So there's a myriad of reasons that you might bring me in, and what the talk I'm going to deliver will obviously vary depending on what that goal is, but I'm still going to circle it back to what are these common themes that I've learned. So if it's a customer service talk, I'm going to talk about what are the top 5 secrets that I've seen that top organizations deliver and use to deliver customer service at a world-class level. So really, again, it all comes back to what's your goal, and I'm going to come in and try to deliver that goal. So it could be any of those I said, or it could be even something outside of those I said.
Okay, you mentioned something about talking about what you've learned from top influencers. What have you learned from top influencers?
So if I had to give you the top 3, because the top 5 would obviously take quite a bit of time to dive into, but if I said, here's the top 3 things I've learned, the first one, so actually I'll say reverse order, number 3, most common, because these are actually, we've studied which are the most common. So I'm going to say out of the top 3, the least common, even though it's still in the top 3, would be that they say no on average. The high achieving influencers say no on average probably 10 times, if not more than the average person. So most people tend to say yes to everything and then try to figure out how to manage it all. Whereas I found the top influencers, they realize they only have a limited amount of time. They can only dedicate so much time, and they're getting more requests for their time. So they have to have a system, however that system works, for saying no. So the third most common trait is they say no more often, and they know how to say no so that they can focus on all the things that are going to push them closer to their dream. So that's number 3.
That's very interesting, but okay, go ahead.
So number 2 would be that they're lifelong learners. So I've often shared the fact that when I've interviewed these top leaders, I noticed that they keep on learning and feeding their mind. It doesn't matter the age. They could be 70 or 80 years old and they're still feeding their mind. I interviewed Bob Proctor recently, and Bob Proctor was in The Secret, and Bob is 85, and he still has the energy of a 25-year-old, but he's still out both teaching and he's still going to events learning. And so I found that they never stopped learning. And so I started noticing and studying this, and I realized that all these top achievers, even if they only had a grade 3 education, like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, they all had libraries in their home, and they were surrounded by books. So my point from this, Douglas, is this isn't a new trait. For hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of years, but at least thousands of years, the top achievers have continued to invest in lifelong learning. So they never stop learning, even if their schooling's done. That would be number 2.
Okay. And what is number 1?
So number 1 is that they live on purpose. And what I mean by that is they've discovered what their calling is, their why, whatever you want to put on for a word for that, but why they were put here. They discovered that, and now they want to spend most of their time living that. So they live, I don't want to use the word passion because it's bigger than that, but they spend a lot of their time doing what they're passionate about while they're living on purpose. So whatever their mission or vision is, they spend most of their time serving that. So that's the most common and number 1 trait.
Okay, I want to dissect the number 1 a little bit, because let's face it, many, many people in this life have struggled just to find what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Some people know right away. Some people you meet, little kids you meet in school, who say, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. And they do. They end up being a doctor, okay? But there's a lot of people, particularly from the baby boomer generation on, who have basically struggled their entire life trying to figure out what it is they want to do, or they're trying to figure out how to afford to do what they want to do. And they ended up having to do something else to make a living that they didn't really want to do. I think that is almost the norm for most people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll even say that's my last book that I wrote was about this. It's called The Book of Why and How, and it was completely about this. It's about how to find your why, because to your point, and I haven't found any definitive number on this, but the best or closest numbers I could get in different studies was that roughly 5% of people at most in their lifetime will either find what they want to do and do it, or will do it. So it's like 95% of people do what they're not wanting to do, or spend their time engaged in what they don't want to be engaged in. And so I would say yes, the vast majority don't find that calling, and or they, even if they found it, they say I can't afford it, or I don't have the time to do it. What I would say to that and this is not to make light of it, because again, I want everybody to be doing what they want to be doing in a perfect world. But really what I would say is that's part of the challenge, Douglas, is people say, how can I make enough money to do this? But if it's truly your calling and it's truly your passion, that's the wrong question. The wrong question is, how much time can I spend doing it regardless if I get paid or not? And nobody wants to hear that, because everybody's saying, well, I have to make a living, and that's true. So do it on the side. You know, how many cabbies over the years lived in LA and wrote their screenplays at night and took acting gigs in the evening because they were so called to do it, but they still had to pay the bills. And now, you know, people driving Uber, I've been in a lot of Uber cars where people said, you know, what I really want to do is this, but I still have to pay the bills. So they're riding Uber and then doing the other on the side. So what I would say is, yes, the vast majority of people don't spend their time doing what they want to do. But I think if you're focused on, and a lot of people are, how can I make money off this thing, then it's probably not your real passion or purpose anyway. You probably have to find a different one. Because I would do everything that I do right now for free. And I don't like saying that around clients, because then they're like, well, I shouldn't have to pay you. But the truth is, it's the stuff I would do if I won the lottery 10 times over and money wasn't an issue. And so I like to live a life. I heard Seth Godin say this one time, that I don't feel like I have to take a vacation from. And so I would do it for free. It just so happens that after doing it for a while, I found a way to carve out a living from it. So I would say, yes, the vast majority of people don't find or spend their time doing what they love. But I think more people could if they just focused on, since I love it, I'm willing to put in time even when I'm not getting paid to do it.
Well, you know, it's interesting to hear something like that. Two things came to mind while you were saying that. Number one is a quote that a friend of mine who's a working musician said. He said, it's amazing how successful one can be in the music business and make absolutely no money. That was the first one. And the second one, that it seems to me when people get very successful in music, I'm just going to use that because I'm a musician, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. That the business end of the business tends to screw them up if there's going to be a problem, particularly with a band. And you can go all the way back to the Beatles and see the problems that they had. They were brilliant songwriters and performers, but when it came to money management, they had zero ability, you know, and they lost millions and they lost their publishing rights and everything. So if somebody is going to be a musician and they're just going to do it for nothing because they love doing it, but then if they start making a lot of money, what advice would you give that person? Get a manager?
Well, and this is a tough one, because how many musicians have been screwed over by the manager as well?
Well,
and,
it's true.
You know,
yeah.
when you say about the musician side, I can relate. I have two guitars beside me here. I have another one over in the corner.
Oh, okay.
I have four CDs out. One of them was nominated for Rock Recording of the Year. And I have friends that say, well, why are you still working? And again, to your point, the music industry isn't that industry unless you're at the very highest level, where because your CD was nominated for an award means that you don't have to work anymore. And so I would say, though, to your point, I would say find somebody you can trust, but you have to find that person you can trust. Like, don't just get a manager because you're told that that's who's going to help you manage your money. But unless you have the mindset for it and the knowledge yourself, and you're a business person to begin with, I think you should leave that to somebody else. If you can leave it to somebody else. That's my opinion on it.
I found that the real serious heavy-duty artists haven't a clue about money. They just don't, because it's the wrong side of the brain. You know, the ones that can tap into that right side of the brain, who can create something brilliant, you know, almost turn into Rain Man when it comes to money.
Yeah, I would agree with that, 100%. And, you know, I even think of some, like, I don't know why this popped in my head, but Nikki Sixx, the bassist from Motley Crue, wrote, he was really the band leader behind the scenes, and he wrote all the songs. I mean, right up until I think maybe the third last album, he wrote every song for the band. He was really the team leader, and yet they still hired a manager. He still didn't dabble in the money. And I still think he had a lot of habits, so I still think he would have blown all the money anyway.
I would agree with you, and it takes a completely different mindset to properly manage money. Because there's the easy formula and the complex formula. The easy formula is you make it, you spend it. And the complex formula is you make it, you don't spend it.
Especially when you get successful. I mean, that's it's the first thing. Like, I'm trying to think who it was. Was it Slash or somebody in a band that had like 140 guitars? I mean, I would love to know how much that collection's worth, but it's over $1 million for sure.
Hey, we got to wrap this up. We went way over. Give us your website real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest one would be bluetalks.com, which we didn't talk about that, but we launched a brand that's kind of in between TED Talks and Chicken Soup for the Soul called Blue Talks. But if you go there, you can learn all about me. And if you want to be in the in the know, let's say, you scroll down, you can join our newsletter on the page. That's an easy way to connect with me. And then the other option is just look up Corey Poirier. Google me. It's not a very common name, so I'm sure you'll find me if you type that into Google. So either of those two ways are the easiest ways to reach me.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on.